And then I'm going to share my screen here. And I'm going to go to a sandbox. And this is a sandbox with many students who are, or I should say faculty who are taking a course right now. And we're all setting up different sandboxes and whatnot, but we are also setting up groups. So it allows that process as well. So how would you like to start this? Is there a place that you'd like to start?
Well, let's start philosophically,
okay.
Right? So Learn allows, Blackboard, I should say, Blackboard allows you to create groups within your courses, enroll people in them with random selection manually or through a self-enroll sign-up process. It allows you to create groups by uploading a CSV file if you desire, if you have them in some other format and you wanted to do that. It also supports groups of groups. So if you think about the term of a course, you might choose to have some final project groups, right? Those people may be going to be working throughout the semester and sort of building on their work as you go. But maybe you also have lab groups, and those might be different, right? The composition of each of those groups. So those groups of groups or groupings of groups are called group sets in Blackboard. So you create a group set, and then each individual group within that then will be numbered. So for example, if you created reading groups, as I showed earlier in my little slide, then the subgroups are reading group 1, reading group 2, reading group 3. But then you might have study groups, and you might have final exam groups, and you might have, presentation groups or something like that. So you have all of those options. There's no limit to how you might segment your students up into different types of groups, and you don't have to use the same modality to select students for those groups. So one group set might be self-enroll, and one group set might be manual because you've done some work and you've identified students who are struggling and students who are doing very well, and you've tried to pair them up into like study pairs or something like that. The nice thing about groups is that group membership provides several things within Learn. So it gives a group space to which you can enable group tools. These group tools include a file sharing area. It includes an easy way to email the group for group members to email one another, basically the whole group. It also provides things like group wikis, discussions, group journals, group blogs, and so forth. So there are those sorts of tools that are available to groups. In addition, group membership is one component that can be used on adaptive release of content. So that means you might make a certain folder available only to a specific group, and you can set that up in advance. And I'm thinking here of courses that are your kind of real time hog courses. You do a lot in there. There's a lot of resources. You might have a lot of students. You might even have decided to merge your sections, and you've got kind of a super section, and you want to keep those enrollments separated by groups, things like that. Groups can be really helpful for all of those things.
So this is an example. In the beginning Blackboard course, we have faculty divided into different groups. And this is looking at it from their point. Notice I have student preview on. And I did this because one of the things she'd mentioned is the student work group area. If I look down here on the left, this is looking at it from the student view. I have myself as faculty. You can see Amy Nelson preview user. I took my student ID and I enrolled myself into each group so I could see them. So I could see how they worked. Very helpful. So I go to this area. I can look at the group homepage, which is this, and I can see which assignments are assigned to this group. I can also see the group tools that I have available to this group. I can exchange files. I can go to the group discussion board, and I can see the different posts that were put in by each of the different people. I, as a teacher, if I wanted to, could grade these. I could grade their group process. I could grade their file exchanges, how they interacted with each other. I can grade their wiki. You can't grade a good discussion board in this area, can you?
And not if you're in as a student.
Right. So you can look at these things, and you can look at their group process and see how they did. So it's kind of a nice little deal. These are group sets, the help doc group as she was talking about. I'm going to exit this for a second so you can see the background here. So here I am as a teacher. I go to groups, and I'm going to go to group sets up here on the left. Sometimes it's hidden. You don't usually see it real well. In fact, I'm going to make this a little bit larger here. This area over here, you can see all groups.
So notice how these are numbered so that you have the help doc 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's in the group set help doc, right? So that kind of helps us to see the groupings of groups.
That's the name of the group?
Yep, the group set name is help doc. Okay. And that's because the assignment is called help doc. That was really how it got named that way. So it's not any more complex than that. So notice if I click on group set over here, you see help doc, and there's no members in this one. But go to here, and I can see the list of groups, the properties, the membership. I can email the whole group set if I want to, and I can delete it. So I'm just going to look at the properties here just so you can see what I mean. So if I go here, is it visible? Is it just a sign-up sheet? So you can have them just sign up if you want to. You can use that for face-to-face courses, for example, for lab space of just signing up. So you have a sign-up sheet, and that's the only thing you're doing is just collecting the sign-up sheet. Really nice for face-to-face courses. You notice I can grade this blog here. I can grade the journals. I can grade the wikis. So I can grade their group work activity. You notice I've just limited to this simply because I didn't need it. Didn't need any more than that. And I can put instructions in here too if I want.
And so notice you don't have to make the groups visible to students. No. And this can be useful if you just wanted to use groups to organize your students, again, in a large class where you wanted to keep groups separate, or to use those other types of tools to deploy certain types of content to certain individuals. To be able to quickly email everyone in a certain group, you know, things like that. It doesn't have to be, it can just be a tool that you use to manage the course as opposed to that students are aware of themselves.
She wants to know how to get to group sets.
Okay, so if I'm looking down here first, make sure you're on users and groups, and then click on groups, and then you should see this bar up here. All groups, group sets, all users.
How do you put groups in a set?
Good question. Create.
So see there, you can create a single group or a group set.
What if I have a bunch of groups already created and I want to put them in a set? It has to be a set from the start.
Correct.
I believe so.
Now, I want you to look at something here. These level 1, level 2, level 3 I have 3 courses going on inside this one course. So I've built one course, and I have 2 weeks in level 1, then I have another 2 weeks in level 2, then I have another 2 weeks in level 3. So I have all of these in one. So I set up manual groups that I enroll. They can't see anything. They have nothing to do with these. These are for me and my organization, just like Heather said. But what I like about this is I go here, I can open the group, I can edit the group. So let me show you what edit looks like. I can email, there's email and a file exchange, but notice they don't see it.
Consider as well if you have cross-listed courses or dual numbered courses. So within the major, this is a low-level course, but for those in some other major on campus, it's a higher level course. And maybe you have a couple of grad students and they're taking your whatever it is course for some grad credit because this is not their field. And then you have undergrads in there who are maybe juniors or something like that. This is a way to teach all of that content out of one Blackboard course shell, because you can create for those grad students, say, a separate group, and maybe they have a different discussion than others, because while they are taking the same class in this topic, you expect that their perhaps level of discourse about the scholarship that you're providing them to read, maybe it's in a different category, something like that.
So like, only those students in the group can see what's in their group, they can't see the other groups, correct?
Correct.
So does that mean everything that you create in the shell, you're then saying which group should have?
You
You
can.
decide.
You
You
can.
decide. So when you just build something, unless you tell Blackboard Learn, only this group should see it, then everybody's gonna see it,
Okay.
right? So you can go ahead and keep building your course and so forth, but when you want to limit something by group, you have the opportunity to do so. You have the ability to do so.
So that option will pop up with each thing I do, like if I put in a test or something.
So if you put
No.
in a test, you would just use adaptive release to send that test to that group.
Adapt.
Adaptive
We'll show you.
release.
It's hold that thought process,
Yeah.
because
Very
I'll go there. I'll go there right now. This is the one thing I really like about groups. I'm managing, as you can see, 36 in one group, 11 in another group, and 34 in another group. I have people who are similar in each group, and I have people who are different in each group. So it's a big mix. I can email the group from right here. So I can set out notices of when this is due, when to do what, so I can manage each group separately. That's why I really like groups. The other thing is you can assign different groups, different discussions, different tests, different assignments, etc. So let's say right now, everybody can see this whole course. Everybody who's in level 1, level 2, level 3 can see the whole course. And I purposefully designed it that way because I wanted people to see the whole, but only take the part. But let's say I wanted to say, no, I want to make sure that I don't have this set up this way. I only want people to see a certain thing. I could make it so that these things are not seen by everybody. I could limit things if I wanted to. But to that point, let me go to a discussion here. I can go to adaptive release. Do you do advanced here, or you just do adaptive release?
I would just do adaptive release. So adaptive release allows us to gate content so that it does not appear to unauthorized or at the wrong time individuals. We can use adaptive release to gate content by date so that students don't get overwhelmed by seeing a 16-week course and all the things they're going to have to do, and then they pass out from stress before they even start. We can make it so that week 1 is open, and maybe they can see that there is a week 2 and can't get into it, and they don't have to worry about the rest, right? They know week 2 is the sun will rise tomorrow, but they don't have to worry about the test that's in week 2 or whatever. We can have things like also gating content based on grade. So you have to perform at a certain level on a particular benchmark quiz before you can move on to the next content. It makes a lot of sense then to obviously have multiple attempts on that quiz so that people can eventually get into that new content. But think about the ways that you would like students to actually move through the material rather than think about, well, you know, I have to put it all up there and I have to be able to see it all, I guess, or whatever. Really think, what is the best, from a learner-centric perspective, what's the best way as a student to feel led through this material in a supported way where they feel like they're empowered and not overwhelmed and, you know, have a happy smile on their face. And then you can replicate that with Learn because we have, with Blackboard, because we have these additional tools. So adaptive release, gate by content, gate by grade, gate by review status. So you have to review this particular material and acknowledge that you reviewed it before I let you move on. You have to acknowledge you've read the syllabus before you can start the course, you know, whatever.
There are actually some departments that force that you have to acknowledge the fact you read the syllabus before you can see any of the course content.
I was even meaner than that. I made my students take a quiz on the syllabus and they had to get a 10 out of 10 or else they could not move on into the course. Because one of the questions was, can I submit late work any old time I want? Because people would do that, right? It was a purely online course. It was self-led, self-paced, blah, blah, blah. And I took my biggest problem with that course and I built it in to gate the content so that they couldn't move forward until they had acknowledged that they can't turn in late work any old time they want, right? So it can kind of save you some headaches too. But, and to our point, You can also gate content by membership. So that could be group membership or it can be individual users. So if you saw someone was struggling and you did not want to call them out and they were not going to be receptive to, hey, come to my office hours, that's not working, you could release remediating content just to that specific user without anyone else in the class being aware of that, or without that student knowing that they were the special one that got the remediative content, right? So very powerful ways to really make your courses adaptive to student needs.
So some programs use adaptive release quite a bit, release week after week, and have to get scores above a certain % before they can move on to the next week, and some do not. So it's just, it totally depends, and it totally depends on your content and what you need. But do notice that adaptive release can be very powerful. You can even do a lot of things at one time if you want to, but
yeah, so
I tend not to.
There is, as you may have seen when Amy was clicking on the chevron, there's also advanced adaptive release. That is very simply adding more than one adaptive release rule to something. So for this piece of content, this certain date has to have passed and you have to belong to this group. So just be aware that those are additive, which means if you don't belong to the group but the date is passed, they're not going to see it. If the date hasn't passed but they do belong to the group, they won't see it. So be careful as you start to build those up that you don't accidentally exclude somebody that you didn't mean to, because there's no either or, whichever one comes first or stuff like that. It's this plus this, both conditions have to be met.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why I didn't use the advanced adaptive release.
You'll notice you'll
recall.
see this under here. And oh, by the way, I can't tell you how many calls a week I get going, I can't see any of the folders. And it's because adaptive release was set like this, and it said you have to review 1 before you can see 2, you have to do that before you can see 3, and they didn't have edit mode on. So if you're a faculty member, you aren't seeing folders and you're going, having a deep breath, make sure your edit mode's on. Then breathe, okay?
And make sure you're not still in student preview from the
Yeah.
last time you went into student preview, because that also tends to be an accident, a mistake that people make.
Okay, so how does groups feel?
We go back to the very beginning, how can we use it to assign groups?
Okay. Let me
Build a
get,
new group.
build a new group.
Yeah, and they could just delete it.
Okay, let me build a new group. Okay, let's do groups.
I mean, I'm not telling you what to, I'm making it.
Okay,
Friendly suggestion.
let's do this. I'm going to create a group set, and I'm going to do a random enroll. And I'm going to just say practice 3. And I can say, yes, it's available, and I'm going to give you blogs, a discussion board, email. I'm going to skip the journal. I'm going to skip these guys. And I'm going to say, yeah, Mary. Yeah, okay.
So with the blogs, one of my courses, we have 4 blogs, and they're each worth 2.5 a piece, or we can weight it, whatever you want, Is there a way to do that in here? Or do we have to, I manually created them in the grade book for now, because I didn't know in here if I could do 4.
So you created blogs, not with a manual column.
They're gonna do low risk writing, so they're gonna have a blog post, and they have to respond to their group members, then they have to do another one, every 2 weeks. And then eventually they're gonna have a big paper with those feedback, with that feedback. So like it's only, smaller points for it. Can you create it in here for grading? I didn't, just because I wasn't sure how to do 2.5 for each. Because they're gonna be creating their own blogs in there. Does that make sense? Yes, no.
I don't think I fully grasp it. So you created, what you did currently was you created blogs.
I just created groups. I
Okay.
didn't create blogs yet, you know, because like they have access to the blog and they have access to discussion. So they're gonna have discussion
Okay.
in their groups, and then they're gonna also use that same group to do their low risk writing.
Okay. Yeah, so you could build this here, and because it's a gradable item, it will have a grade center column, and then you can use that in weighting, however you like.
Okay.
So if you choose, and we'll get to this in a moment, you can make a category called low risk writing, and that category will contain all the grades from all of the group blogs that a particular student has done, and you say that is worth 10% of the final grade, or whatever it is. And so that's just about having your grade book set up that way. But yeah, you can set it for whatever points. It doesn't actually matter how many points because you'll be weighting them. Right, so you could set it for 2.5
So that I
points, I
still
guess.
have to create it in the grade book, correct?
No, so when you create a gradable item, a column is automatically populated as a grade book.
But they're gonna have 4 separate blogs, not just one.
So,
But are they gonna have 4 separate entries?
Well, but then they're gonna respond to other group members, and then they may, I don't know, what if they come up with like a random other, or they could create another blog,
Okay,
you know?
I will tell you, this piece as you're putting in here is the only people who are gonna see that are the members of this group.
yeah.
They cannot go see other people's.
Okay.
Well, what you're doing here is you're allowing this group to communicate with each other, and you can go in and you can grade their activity as a group. This is only internal and it's only in a box.
Now, what you could do for, so group tools is a little bit different than using groups as just a way to divide students. So the group tools is more like, I've divided you all into these, here's your handouts, and here's your marker, right? And here's your computer. And then I'm giving you something different. Here's some Legos, and here's whatever,
Because
right?
each group, like, they
But-
each have to put up their own discussions, so they're all gonna have different, like, they're each gonna have a facilitator, and so it'll be a different discussion for each group, each week. So that's why I have them separate, and I'm not gonna put them in the discussion board.
Okay, well, you could build a discussion board, not as part of this.
Okay.
But you could build a discussion and use adaptive release. Only this group can see this discussion board.
Okay.
But this is really like, I've broken you into the different parts of the room, and I'm giving you different tools to use. This group can't see what this group is doing, this group can't hear what that group is talking about. And really, the group's tools that are there are so that I can come over, just like Amy has suggested, and say, is everyone participating? Is everybody contributing? Those sorts of things, versus I want to just release a particular set of things to these people, but I'm not really worried about them not interacting with other parts of the course right now or things like that. Does that make sense? So the groups do function in a couple of different ways. I think adaptive release is probably with a regular blog, is probably your best option there, because then you can create each blog that you need, like 4 different blogs or whatever, and you could use adaptive release, advanced adaptive release to say, you have to be a member of this group, and it has to be, week 1 or whatever opens this one, and then later on, we open the next blog and so forth. If that adheres to your plan.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So as you're looking at this, I'm creating my group. I'm saying, these are the tools you guys get to play with. Okay, this is your space to play. This is your box. This is your sandbox. And then I'm saying, okay, I either want a certain number of students per group and then distributed some way if I have remainders, or I'm saying I want it divided into so many groups. So which would you prefer? Which would be the most common?
Number of groups.
Okay, so I have a number of groups. 5 groups, 4 groups matter? Okay, I'm gonna distribute them. I'm not gonna allow personalization at this point, and I'm gonna create a smart view. Okay, just note that in your brain. I'm creating a smart view and submit. Okay, so now I've got practice 3. I've got 5 groups. It's available. Okay, fine. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to look at this. So practice 3, group 1, practice 3, group 2, practice 3, group 3, group 4, group 5. And notice how many people I have. It automatically did that for me. Correct. Correct. It automatically did that for me. So a nice little deal for that. Okay, so now you're talking about creating an assignment for those groups, right? So I'm going to go into level 3 because I did this purposefully for this guy, for this group. And I'm going to say, okay, I've got this group project here. I'm going to go edit this group, edit this assignment, sorry. So I'm at assignment. Okay, so I'm at the assignment level. I'm looking at the assignment. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to, where is it? Under submission
The
details.
first submission
Yeah.
tools.
Yep. And I'm going to make this a group assignment. So what I want you to notice is I could assign this just to group 1. Or I can assign it to groups 1 through 5.
And notice that you might not have all of your students in a group set. So if you have a group set for students that have signed up for, you know, they want, they're part of a certificate program, I don't know, whatever, right? And everybody else isn't. Maybe you have those few people in a group that's certificate participants. They need some other additional, they're taking an extra test that other people aren't or something like that. You could create that test and then make it available only to that one group or a couple of groups and not to the whole rest of the class, right? So as you think about this, don't think about groups as like, I have to take the total number of students, I have to divide every single one, everyone has to have a home in a group. That's not necessarily the case. So it really opens up the ways that you think about things, right? So you'd want to manually enroll into one group, that's those certificate participants in your course. Maybe they're K-12 teachers that are doing professional development and they need some continuing ed credit or something like that. All the rest of your students are traditional or non-traditional undergrads, right?
So, as I said, options here. You do not have to assign an assignment to all members of the group set if you don't want to. So let's say you've got 5 topics that are all in the same genre. You can assign one group to each particular set, and then you can have an assignment where they come together and they share what they each learned. So you can end up having one upload, you know, each of these different topics or each of these different papers, or give each of the different presentations and then have them come together and lead discussions or do something else together. So, okay, I've got that. You can change the grade sets, you got that. Okay, anything else? Anything else? Anything else I'm missing?
I don't think so. Notice that you can require the group to submit. Can't see it very well there. You can have multiple attempts and then you can choose which you'd like to grade. Let me see if there's anything else.
So how many of you use average attempts? I use it a lot on tests, practice tests. You can submit 5, but I'm gonna use your average score. So you have to think, right? You can't just say, oh, I'll just try it once and see how it goes. If I get 30%, who cares? Average changes that mindset.
This is a good way to teach them. They'll never forget again. If it's a math class, be sure you've gone over averages first.
So anyway, you can allow multiple attempts. We usually recommend people do, or else you might get bugged with, oh, I'm sorry, I uploaded the wrong thing. And it might be at midnight, and then they're complaining the next morning. So I always recommend more than one. But yes, you can say highest, first, or first graded, last graded, or average. I mean, so you do have the option there.
And if truly you're just concerned about somebody accidentally uploading their history paper instead of your English essay or whatever,
Right.
then use the first greatest. You know, the first one graded. Because then you've got, so you can override, but then you don't have people that are continuing to try or whatever.
So, does that make sense?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah.
So like if I have a student who's
If you really only wanted
super
one
anxious and
attempt,
she submits the same thing 5 times.
Mhm.
If I had put first graded attempt, I just grade it once and the rest are gonna go away.
if you see, even better, if you say first graded attempt, well, let me think about what release you'll be on. I'll say this. Learn has the capability in a later release than you're using today, I believe, to not mark those other 4 attempts as needs grading.
Yes.
Only the one you said you wanted to grade will appear in your needs grading.
If you have four, it may be, you will see the other ones
You'll
unless
see
you
them.
delete those attempts.
You'll see them, but they won't be marked as needs grading. They'll have a different icon so that you'll know, like, oh, ignore.
But then I could choose if I knew, oh, they only submitted 2, they probably submitted the wrong one first. I could choose.
You can always
allow-
override a grade.
Okay.
There is no time on earth in Blackboard where you can't override a grade manually.
Makes sense. Any other questions within this setup here? So in this assignment, I've chosen this assignment and I've said everyone in this group set is going to have to do this assignment. And I'm going to say they have multiple attempts, but only the first graded attempt is going to go in their grade column and submit. Yes.
So this way, with this assignment, the way it shows up, if I enter like 100% on one of the students in that group, does it automatically populate 100% to every group member?
Yes.
Is there a way to change that? So if one student gets 98, is it
You can
manual override or?
Always
Okay.
override. Yep.
So I'm going to go into the full grade center here.
And in fact, in group assignments, you can decide if everybody submits. Just because it's a group assignment doesn't mean that they
I'm
all
going to go into actually.
provide one paper. Maybe they're working on sections of a paper, so each one of them submits and then I grade those, but I have them in group because they're on a different topic than somebody else, right? Or I can decide I only want one group submission, so whoever's the principal investigator, the boss, the facilitator of that group, they're gonna submit it. Everyone's gonna get the same grade, but I'll change them based on, maybe they keep a, one of the things that you can have in a group space is tasks. Maybe I go through and I look at the tasks that they set for themselves and see, oh, actually, Johnny did 75% of the tasks, or contributed, 80% to the wiki or whatever it is. That makes me think that maybe they don't all earn equally the same points on the final product, right? So that's another reason why it's helpful to have that group space rather than just sending students out on their own into the black box of the real world. And then they come back with a group assignment that maybe one of them, sweated over for 2 weeks and everybody else was like, she's got it, it's cool.
So I'm in the grade book. And you'll notice you see all these little shaded guys. Groups. So if I go up here, okay, first of all, how many people use filter button?
What's filter button?
Oh, honey, turn on your filter button. Filter allows you to narrow what you're looking at. So if I click this little filter guy, notice there's nothing here, but if I click the filter, now all of a sudden I can look and, oh, I just want to look at group practice 1. I just want to look at those group members. So it narrows down who you're looking at. And so you'll notice here I can look at just assignments, just blogs, just discussion boards, just journals, just tests, just discussions. So I can narrow down what I'm looking at. So it really, really helps. And I use it quite a bit actually. I can look at just quizzes. So this is how you can look at just those groups. And you'll notice here that I have stars. Those are my favorites.
How do you put that?
So if I go to Smart Views, I can say, which ones are my favorites? And I put little stars here. Add to favorites. So I'm just going to click that one guy, okay, just that one. And I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to come down here and notice what's here. So they'll just show up underneath full grading as your favorites. So things that you come back to all the time. Usually tests are one of the most popular, and that's an automatic, but anything else you want to add? Here.
There are 9 automatically created smart views in the Grade Center based on the type of assignment. So discussions, assignments, tests. I'm trying to think, there are some others as well. Probably blogs with these journals.
And you can create your own.
And then you can create your own as well. Just because those already exist doesn't mean that they have to be in your favorites or over on the menu, right? They're just, if you created something that's an assignment, it's already in a smart view called assignments. And if someday you ever went into the smart views and you favorited assignments, you would now see an easy button to click on your course menu right under the full grade center that says assignments. And when you click on it, you see the portion of the grade book that just is assignments.
So look at your smart views, and your filter button is basically your way of making things go faster and easier in this grade center. Because let's face it, if you've got 100 assignments or whatever it is, and you've got 25 students, you can make life pretty dang complicated, pretty dang fast. And so that just allows you, the filter button simply allows you the opportunity to just narrow your view. But I want you to notice something else. You notice what I just clicked on here? Blogs. Blogs was one of the options I gave the group that I was going to grade. So that's why she popped up.
So do folks feel good about using groups and some of the tools to control your view of the grade center in a way that also doesn't overwhelm you, just like we try to fight overwhelm with students? Well, maybe it makes sense to talk a little bit then about the other things related to the grade book since we're already there. We could talk about color coding. Let's see. Actually, we can get to item analysis from the grade center, column organization, and even delete attempts. We can do that from the grade book too.
So here's color coding. You see how I got there? I go up to manage, color codes. So you can change it so that you can look at anything. I have a default in this course that if it's between 75 and 80, it turns orange. And I have it that if it's below 75, the text is red. So it's just an eye popper. It's something that just, makes it stand out. But you can put whatever. Do you have one that you like more than anything?
I have a really horrendous grade book that show this capability where, good grades are in green and sort of medium grades are yellow and poor grades are red, but it is not the text, it is the whole cell. So like that thing just looks like a hot mess. But I do it to show look, you could really go to the nth level on this grade book color coding. Truly, it's there to help you keep an eye on folks at a glance. If you are visually oriented and that helps you to keep an eye on somebody, to just scroll down that sort of current running grade and to see oh, I've got 3 reds, then absolutely make use of it. If that's not something if that just feels like more stuff to do, then you've never need to enable it, but it's there for you if that's helpful. You also can change the color of some other things. So under the grading stats, so if you wanted to see things that were needs grading in a different color, if that was the way you wanted to add some highlighting to your experience, you could do that.
Is there any way to do it by assignment so you can kind of quickly see, oh wow, students overwhelmingly do better in this assignment than this other assignment?
What I would do there is I would look at my smart view of assignments. And I would just glance down. Is there one that has tons of red? Is there one that doesn't?
Oh,
You know
so
what I'm
you're
saying?
doing the color coding all along,
Yeah.
and then you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Can you add?
You can turn the color coding on and off. So you can turn it on just to do a kind of assessment around midterms, right? And say like, is anybody really causing trouble with it? There's obviously other ways to do that as well and learn, but one way you could do it would be color coding, glance at it, and then go back in and just turn the color coding off again, if that's gonna irritate you late at night when you're hovering over your laptop. All right, so there's a ton in the manage gradebook area. And one of the most important is categories, because that's truly where the tool is going to fit your process. Whereas I think a lot of people mistakenly believe that their process must be in Procrustean fashion made to fit the tool, right? So think about how you want your points to work out over the course of a term. And know that you have the flexibility to add an additional quiz or drop a quiz grade, those sorts of things. If that's what you would do on your Excel spreadsheet, on your paper, whatever you're using, ledger book, then that's something that you can reflect here. In categories is one of the ways that you do it. So if you set it up so that your syllabus says your final paper is 20% of the grade and participation is 10% of the grade and XYZ is the other 70%. You can use categories to do that. You just create a category, final paper. You create it because maybe it's not just the final grade on that paper. Maybe they do a little pre-work, they do an outline, and they get some points for that. And then they do some feedback with a group. And then they submit a first draft of the paper, and then they submit a final draft of the paper. But all of that stuff is taken together as their final paper, 20% of the grade. You do that by creating that final paper category and adding all of those different activities or even manual grade columns to that category. Then you have a participation category, right, that you're gonna give 10% of the final grade. And that might include things like their attendance. It might also include things like voluntarily going to some event on campus, right? So they went to see a lecture that was not required, but they get a little participation credit for it. That was something that I used to do a lot, just to drum up attendance to our department events. So that's a possibility as well. You can add columns for things like that.
This is a course that I just ended up setting up the grade books, but I think there's one of the things that I wanted to show you within this, and I have short papers under one category, and then you'll see final paper, final presentation piece in here. But there are different categories that have been set up. And now where's
It's a short
my
paper with a number.
Oh, here we go. I think this is edit column information. Okay. So here's a little bit about what she's talking about. So in my final course here, I've divided things up so that discussions are 30% of the grade. So I have a weighted column, discussions 30%, the short papers are 30%, the final project, which is a paper and a presentation and an outline, 30%, and then the tests are 10%. And I've got proportionally here because things are worth different points. But notice that I can drop the lowest grade or 2 lowest grades or 3 lowest grades, as many lowest grades as I want. So I always encourage people to set things up in weights and percentages and not put points in their syllabus. Because now if you change your mind, if something goes wrong, it doesn't match your syllabus anymore. So if you can weight things out and say a percentage, you end up with a much more flowy, I need to change that, I screwed up there kind of thing. It allows you more choice.
Except if you put a statement in your syllabus that says everything is subject to change at your discretion.
Oh, I totally agree, but
I think you do both. I did both.
I hate those arguments. I hate it.
Well, all I'm saying is this whole category thing has sent me this semester, this summer, over the edge. so I don't need to stop.
Why is that?
Not the category, I mean the percentage.
Oh,
It's,
Yeah.
it's been a real difficult thing.
share with us. I want.
Well, because trying to get them set up, making sure all right.
It wasn't set up correctly, and we didn't realize that till the end of the semester,
Oh.
because it was set
Oh.
up, like, all the assignments were together instead of individualized. And then, the logs weren't separate, and so and then we adjusted, luckily most of the students did better when we adjusted it out,
Yeah.
but, because, the assignments were 10%, 10%, 10%, and then 30, and they were just lumped together at 60. And so when one student maybe did horrible on the first paper, but did better on their second, otherwise it weighted it across.
I think I probably need more orientation to this and to understand it, because it's just very confusing.
If you utilize these same practices term over term,
Yeah.
investing and understanding this better will be to your benefit, because your grade book those settings will convey when you copy.
Yeah, it's
So when
just-
you get it set to where it is actually right and not like this unfortunate mistake that happened and then you had to do some adjusting.
We don't have to make it equal 100 points, right? It
No.
could be like 20 points, but it's weighted to be 25%,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
That's the value of using percents and not points.
And my other question is, so we use assignments, and then some of our assignments are turned in assignments.
Mhm.
Can you lump those together, or are they two separate categories?
No, you can lump them.
So how do you lump?
It becomes a category. So you have to set things up in categories first, or you have to do columns. So if I'm looking at this, for example, I've got these different columns that I would have to group into an area, or I have different categories I have to group.
Because in my, I'm just looking at my course now for this summer, or this fall, and I have assignments, and then I have Turnitin assignments.
And you want both of those together to be worth some percent of the final grade, like 40% or something.
Yeah.
Right? So put both of those into a total assignments category.
Okay,
And then don't assign any weight to assignments and turn it in assignments. Assign the weight to total assignments category, 40%.
okay,
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you can create anything you want, be not upset by the fact that some things will be automatically created for you.
okay.
That's okay, ignore them. If it doesn't suit your needs, right? Because maybe under assignments, you want to include the pop quizzes you give or something like that is not an assignment at all. You create your own, this is my real assignments category.
Yeah.
And then you can put the pop quizzes in, your turn-in assignment, your regular assignment, whatever.
Can you remind me where we are right now? We're in grade 7.
Okay.
How did you get?
So if you just scroll up to the, oops, sorry. Oh, I was just gonna say, just to kind of a navigational help, if you actually get in there and then you scroll up to the top, you see some
Yes.
helpful information.
So I have a weighted total, and there's a weighted total that's in every grade book automatically. It's just most people don't use it. I use it. So I click on this and I said edit column information. And then within this, okay, you have this automatic statement, the weighted sum of the grades for the user based on the categories and weighting. So I have it being displayed as percentage, and I have different categories, selected columns. So I have a column that groups all discussions. So whether it's a voice thread discussion or whether it's Blackboard discussion, I have a sum of those discussions in a column. So I've added a column basically that sums all of that.
So my next question, I don't know if I'm thinking about this right, but does this only work if you have everything loaded into the shell already? Like you can't slowly add assignments, because then how does it know how
So
the
when you-
student's going if it doesn't know you're gonna have 3 papers versus 1 paper?
That's why it's helpful to use categories, because you just have a paper category. When you create that assignment, you just assign it to the papers category. So maybe your course was born with 3 papers because that's what you did last year, and you decided to do a 4th one. Create a new assignment for that paper and then include that assignment in the category papers. You don't have to go back and mess with your weighted columns at all, because your weighted final grade already knows whatever's in the papers category. It could be 1 thing, 3 things, 7 things. You could add 10 more things before the end of the semester. That's worth 20%.
right? So it's kind of a way, if you think of kind of a tree, the kind of lowest, or like a family tree, the like lowest folks on the tree are your individual assignments of whatever. You group those into kind of groupings. Those are your categories. And then you use those categories and you provide weights to give the kind of top of the pyramid, which is the weighted total grade.
So how is that from the student perspective as they're trying to figure out how they're doing?
So you decide what the student can see of their grade, right? So some people decide they don't show grades to students during the term. That is not a student-centric approach because it doesn't let them know how they're doing to right themselves if they're going off track.
Talk about stress level. Yeah.
And some people, unfortunately, make visible to students because you have the control over what students see. The final, out of their total points that they'll earn eventually, which means they have an F up until the end, right? Because they've not earned all those points. So I think the humane and student-centric instructor instead provides them with essentially a running total. And if you use these category weights, then it will say you have completed 2 of the 5 papers so far, and it's worth 20% of your grade. We got an A on both of those papers, and we're not counting those other 3 against you that you don't have zeros for. So it's gonna show that, you know, if you're doing well in the course, that papers component, that's 20% of your grade, is an A, and then your other 80% of the points or however.
Yeah, how do you do that then? Where
Is it
where
a grade book
This.
running?
Yeah.
This right here, that's all you want. Your final grade that you have, whether that be weighted or not weighted, you have this clicked as yes. That's all you need.
Will you have to go to the categories?
No, you don't. You just go to your final score total. So this is my final score total right here.
Weighted total?
That's what mine is. Yours may just be total.
Yeah, mine's a total.
Okay. So you simply go edit your column information and then go down to where it says running total, calculate as a running total, and you say yes.
So how do we know if we need to have a weighted total versus a total?
If you have categories,
Yeah,
you want a weighted total.
okay, well, I do know that, so that's.
Yep.
Yeah. Total is just gonna truly, it's just like it says, it's the total. So it's not saying some of these things are worth more than others. This is saying total.
Saying count all the points and add them all the way up.
Points. And then it's if you have some quizzes that are worth 25 points and some quizzes that are worth 5, but you meant for a quiz to equal a quiz in weight, then you've got a problem because now you got total and your quiz grade is lopsided in favor of one of those quizzes. That's why it's a very good idea to utilize the weighted
Edit,
and the categories with percents.
so we go edit under column and then we do categories.
If
We have
you're
a weighted total.
if you're using the weighted total, then you want to do your categories.
Right, and then under that, you do column 2, or you could, if you do
It's-
edit, it's edit column information.
Yep,
And that's how you get to.
yep, correct.
And then the running total is what you're wanting to enable.
Yep.
So I don't have to do anything when I created the categories originally, I don't do anything with it.
You don't have to.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I don't have to, okay.
Again, you have control over what students see. So you don't have to feel like as you're making the grade book easier for you to use with smart views and with filtering and with categories and different weightings and so forth, students don't necessarily have to see the work you're doing until you decide to make that total column visible to them.
Do you guys Amy, have you guys done a video or done a worksheet, a tool about this?
I've done several, but it's been very user specific. Because everybody does something different. Everybody's looking for something different. But I can definitely do something generic here if you want. I can definitely do that. The one thing I want you to notice with this one is notice that there are some voice threads in here, week 3 voice thread. If I put a voice thread in, it doesn't label it as a discussion. So if you have discussions that you're grading, it doesn't look at it, it just basically uncategorizes it. So I manually make that. I go in here and I change that category and I can do so. For instance, I can click let's say I go down here and I click my voice threads. What I can do is I can change the category. So usually it comes up when I create them, it says no category, and I change them to discussion.
And if you think about the logic of the tool, that discussions is talking about Learn's own native discussions. And voice threads, though we know it's a discussion tool from the perspective of the software, it's a third-party thing. It's an extra thing.
Right.
So for any extra things like that, voice threads, or if you have some other type of activity that you like students to do, an H5P activity or some other thing, then just be aware, it's not going to Learn won't know automatically where to categorize that. So you'll want to go to this bulk view and then sort those out as you like. The nice thing is in the bulk view, you'll be able to see that it doesn't have a category.
And I will tell you this particular tool, this area, when I end up working with courses and designing courses, and you can talk to Shelley Barless about this. We've spent a lot of time in the last 3 courses looking at this. This has made her life so much easier because now as she goes to SmartView, she has like 50 no-point assignments in her gradebook. So she can take those, condense those, and see those. And we have first half of course, second half of course. So she can split it up that those smart views are really broken down, and then she can look at different types of assignments, prep you, etc. So it really does help narrow down your gradebook and be able to analyze this. And now I can look at this, and it's really easy for me to see how many points different things are worth as well, and make sure that matches my syllabus.
So, 2 questions. How do you create the category?
So if I go to manage categories, create category.
Up in the left button where creating things often is.
Manage.
Yeah, manage.
Yeah, the
Everything
manage
starts with
area
manage.
of the gradebook is
This is your
going to
friend.
be your friend.
Manage is your friend. Play and manage as much as you want.
Yeah.
Highly recommend just going in one of your sandboxes and playing with manage as much as you want.
The 2 things that I would say look around at are the manage and truly the little contextual chevron on a specific grade column. You can do so many things. The list is like this long of all the different stuff you can do with a specific grade column. And it's a little different for different types of activities.
You do know you can edit rows displayed?
Yeah.
Okay, right? You can show 50 if you want.
Oh, really? I didn't know. Where do you do that at?
Right down here at the bottom. See? Edit rows displayed. Click. Type in as many as you want, up to 50.
But then you have to do that for each course, right? You never.
Oh yeah, and every time you log out, it'll change and you have to do it when you go back in.
Unfortunately, it defaults
It's,
again.
yeah, it's only that particular course or that particular session. But do know that that's there. You can also end up clicking the icon legend and you can see what those different symbols may mean that you're seeing. Not participating, for instance, look at these groups. Not participating, hash is going this way. Anonymous grading going the other way. So, group stuff.
One question.
Yeah.
I think you said this, but I missed it. If within my categories, let's say I have a category that's quizzes.
Yep.
And I have 5 quizzes. I do not want them all to be equal. How do I do that? How do I assign weights within the category? If I have 1 quiz that I want to be worth 50%, the other 3 quizzes are worth the other 50%.
But the points are the same?
I don't pay much attention to points, I'm almost worried about percentage.
Okay, if you have so are the grade that the student earns is in a percent, so 100%,
Right.
not points?
Yes.
Yeah, so then what you would do, if you have a category, you'd have a category for in this example, you had like some quizzes that each one of them adds up to half, and the other half of the quiz grade is just 1 quiz.
Right.
So then I would create a category for those 3 quizzes and set a category weight for that of half. So rather than saying quizzes are worth 20%, say this category of quizzes is worth 10%. This 1 quiz is worth 10%. So you can create basically, you can almost do any kind of grading with the Blackboard gradebook. It's a matter of thinking through almost top down, you know, like the total 100% that's available in a class, how you divide that, just like you do on a syllabus, just like you represent it to students in that simplified way. And then
I just do it in Excel. I've never managed to get it all, categorize it all out. I just.
well, you can also download the gradebook, work in Excel, and then upload it.
That's what I do. I
Okay.
download the gradebook in Excel and everything, that percentage value.
Gotcha.
Formula.
Yeah. So if you had a case like that where truly you actually don't care how many points are in a quiz. Like sometimes I give them 10 questions and sometimes I give them 4 questions and it doesn't really matter. For me, a quiz equals a quiz equals a quiz. I would just always grade quizzes in percent and not even talk about points, you know. Just to make life easier, though you could put them all in as points and there is a way to do that accounting within the gradebook. But if there's not a reason to have distinct points for different quizzes, then I say, why bother?
So
All right, is there anything
I'm
else in
looking
the
at,
gradebook?
yeah, I'm looking at our time here, what we have left. We have item analysis was one of the things.
Yeah, which is you can access from a test in the gradebook if you have some attempts.
Yes, I have tests and I have, okay, so here's some test results. And you'll see that there's item analysis here. So you have to have attempts. So you have to have a column that has tests in it. Okay, have to have attempts in there. Item analysis. Okay, I never use this, so
Oh.
you're gonna have to walk through
Yeah,
it.
so we see up at the top the possible points, the questions, how many are still in progress, those types of statistics, the average time it took students to take it. You also see a highlight of the difficulty level and discrimination of the different questions. As you scroll down, you see the this little pink or reddish dot is telling us that this is has a discrimination factor that is not ideal. So this question might need some revision. If you go to your grade center, and there are really 2 ways to get to it. One, if you're in the grade book, you go to the column for this test, test number 1. The contextual menu will have item analysis. The other way to get to it is from the course content area where the test appears. The contextual menu there will also have item analysis on it. So you can get to it either way. For the discrimination, we use Pearson's coefficient, discrimination coefficient. And we really are with discrimination for folks who don't use item analysis a lot or do a lot of sort of high stakes quantitative type measures. Really, we're looking for how well a particular test question predicts how well the student does on the overall test. So if you think of taking the whole test with 100 questions or whatever, some students are going to be an A student on that test, B, C, F, whatever, right? However, an A student, 3 A students got an F on that question, and 5 out of 10 F students got that question right. That tells us maybe it's miskeyed, or maybe it's an ambiguous question where 2 answers are equally plausible, something like that. So that's what the discrimination is helping us to figure out. Now, there are a lot of benefits to this. When we discover that we have poor questions, we also can actually look at the responses themselves, and we can say if we did, either miskey the question and we said A was correct, it really should have been C or whatever. Or when we discover both A and C actually, according to, a student came up and said, the textbook says right here that A and C are both correct or whatever. And you say, all right, fair enough, let's fix it. You can go back in, and when you adjust the key, it will regrade all of the tests so that everybody has the correct and final answer. And then any students who had not yet taken the test won't need that regrading. They have the new key, if you will. So they'll have the appropriate response to their submissions. So if you wanted to, you could edit the test directly from here, as you see in the upper right. So if you discover, one of these is not a great question, and we have the text down below so that you know which one it is, you could go to edit the test and actually change that. There's also some other options from the gradebook itself, from the grade column of tests. Yeah, question?
Is discrimination then the same as point by serial, or is there a slight difference between the two?
They are slightly different, and that's probably as much as I know about it. Because point by serial, I think, is using a different coefficient to determine the variation than. That's why I specifically say Pearson's. That's the one I know that we're using in this. Point by serial, I believe, is a separate one. Cronbach alpha, like all that is a little bit different.
I didn't know what you were looking for there, so.
Yeah, so this would be a place where we could clear attempts, because we had already discussed getting rid of an attempt, right? So we could clear attempts from here, although this is going to be for all users right there.
It is really good, though, if power goes out or something during a test that you have in class, clear attempts for all users works really well.
Yeah. So if you wanted to, you could download all results. That's a way that you can download all the answers, basically, to the test if you wanted to work offline to read through, essays or something like that. If you had, this was one that Amy thought would be really helpful, grade by question. If we click on that, we can actually see each of the questions. And if we want to, we could select a particular one of these to grade. Now, these are like real students, right? So I don't want to click on any of
No,
this.
you don't want to, please don't.
Yeah, so if you clicked on one of these things, none of you are in her class, are you? Because you're seeing the behind the scenes test. You could click on that. If you want to switch over.
It's over with.
Okay.
It's done.
Because I have only fake students in mind, but if you click on that, then you can grade by question. So if you've got, most of it was multiple choice and it was automatically graded, and I've got an essay, short answer essay at the end, you could just grade across all the attempts by that one, at one time. Let's see.
By the way, the calendar tool does not sync with your syllabus. 50% of students always get that wrong, but no, it does not sync with your syllabus.
Your syllabus
Never,
is a
ever.
Word document. So the calendar does not read it and scrub it and then add things.
Yeah.
But the calendar does sync with all of your activities that you create.
Mhm.
All right, was there anything else in the
yes.
grade book itself?
I don't think so. I think that was.
Oh, the test choice feedback.
Yes, so I go into the tests,
yeah,
right? You want to go
yeah.
into the tests. Okay, so there's a couple things in course tools. I'm going to go with rubric. I should go with tests first. Let's go with tests first.
I'll just say this quickly. So in order to create assessments that are true instruments of instruction, we can provide a lot more feedback for users, right? So we can not just tell them, yes, no, was that correct? But also give them guidance to help them with success in continuing to study for the quiz and so forth. So here we have, so here's a question. Let's see, our answers. Okay, I see. Is this a matching?
Yeah, you maybe don't know what.
Yeah, that's kind of a.
You can back out of that one if you don't want it.
Yeah, well, let's go to another question. All right. Yeah, I want one that's more like multiple choice. Yeah, let's do that.
You notice you had the option to remove and regrade on each of these questions. Because this test was already taken, you can go in, look at these questions, and you can remove a question and regrade it.
So that means, you take it out and then all the grades are refigured as if that question never existed. It seems obvious, but I recently learned that an unnamed other LMS doesn't do that. So if you take the question out, now everyone's grade is out of 9, and some people have extra credit suddenly because they got 10 out of 9.
Oh, yeah.
Blew my mind a little bit. I was like, all right, well. So we have here are different answers, right? One is correct and the other ones are not. And we have feedback here on these items. So if we wanted to have correct feedback response, we can. If we wanted an incorrect response, we can. And we also have, and I have this open on mine, we also can provide feedback for all of the different, oh, I think I need to at the test level. For all of the questions as well. Yeah, that's an edit the test rather than in the test canvas. So is there anything else that we want to talk about while we're in the test questions themselves?
I just want you to notice that you have also a button up there at the top. So if you wanted to, you could select 5 questions and say delete and regrade. You can also select all of your questions if you want to and make them worth 2 points rather than 1 point. You know, so you can do multiple things on a test in this area. Just so you know.
Yeah, and if you wanted to edit the entire test, we could.
No, go.
Well, I don't know your. I don't want to mess up your life here. So, oh, here we go. So this is also where we can see things like set as the external grade. So if you had something like a single test that was the entire grade at some point, you could set a single column like that as the external grade, meaning that's what the students see. Again, that's kind of contrary to what we've been talking about, but let me see if there's anything else. Oh, attempt statistics. This will give you some information about how students are taking the test, right? So the average score on a particular item, and then how folks in the class answered to those. It's not exactly that item analysis, but it does give you some information on how students are responding to exams. It can be useful, especially if you reuse exams a lot and you find something strange in one particular.
And since we're running out of time,
Yeah.
I'm going to go to rubrics here.
Yeah, rubrics.
And I'm going to go to this one because I've used this a lot. I just open it, right?
Go to view associated
Associated
content.
content. I
Yeah.
forgot how to do it.
Yeah, it's
So I'm
not
looking at the
obvious.
assignment
Yep.
right there.
Yep.
So this isn't obvious. It
It's
isn't
not.
obvious at all.
We were literally on the phone and I was like, no, I'm sure it's there. Hold on a sec. We had to get off the phone and then I was like poking. I was like, oh, okay. And then I sent an email like, here's how you get to it.
So now I'm in
But yeah, not
rubrics.
obvious.
I have to go to rubrics under course tools. Then I have to go find it. Then I have to view associated content. And once I have the associated content, then I click on that chevron and I can view the evaluation report. And
So, yeah, not as simple as it could be, but this is maybe helpful to understand that from the perspective of the tool, every rubric is a snowflake. Even though you are using what you think of as the same rubric on several assignments or in different classes even, from the perspective of Blackboard, every rubric, because it's editable, is unique, right? So you can't compare them because someone might have changed something in one of them. So that's why we have to go down to like, which rubric are you talking about? And in which assignment, because we can't compare them across assignments right within the tool because you might have changed the rubric a little bit between those two things. Anyway, it's not easy to find, and there's no two ways about that.
this is a discussion rubric. And I have teachers, so there's going to be a lot of variation. Teachers know how to do a discussion, so it's kind of obvious. But the one thing that you'll notice is that the possibles in red, the actuals in blue, community is the thing that's a little lower, and community is my response factor to other people. So are you responding, are you posting when you're supposed to post, and are you responding to others in a timely way? So this piece is that. So that's where you're getting the report from. And then you'll end up seeing on the next page, you have an evaluation number, average, median, mode, standard deviation. The only place there's really a standard deviation is on community, where it's a little bigger.
So where I could see this would be valuable is really when you've got a rubric being used in 5 different sections of a course for like a final paper. You've got different people teaching it. How does this look with each teacher? As long as you aren't changing it, as long as you know that's the same. Which if it's from a master course, it should be. But I can see where that would be valuable. As soon as you showed that to me, I went, oh, that's so cool.
I'm like, I'm sure it's here somewhere. Hold on a second. I know it's there. So that's one report. Other reports that are available within your course are in the sort of menu area under evaluation. You can get to different types of reports there. So, I mean, they each have descriptions. I don't know how much of these, folks are using. But there are a couple of them that rely on goals, which is a tool that you're not utilizing, which will be, so course performance is based on goals, and so is the, there's another that's course overview. But so you can get reporting on things like student activity and access and so forth, if that's of interest to you and you'd like to do that.
Student activity, user activity in groups. Kind of a nice little one to have.
Yeah, for sure.
Single user participation report. Also kind of nice when you're worried about somebody and you're not thinking maybe they're stepping up to where they need to be. And I use this when somebody says, I need to redesign this course because I'm not sure what's being hit. If you have statistics turned on in different areas, I can run a report and I can see which areas are getting hit the most. Which is kind of nice. Yeah. Yeah, so are there other reporting needs that folks have that don't have to do with those basically student activity in different content areas or rubrics? Or any other burning questions that we've not
You said there was a way to change the grading scale, so like magazine.
Yeah, yep, that is your grading schema. And that is done in the grade center area under manage grading schemas.
Like this?
So you can set it up with as many or as few rows as you want. You might have a simple one that's a pass-fail schema, and it's 60% or better pass, below 60% fail. But then if you notice, you can actually also specify, for example, if for some things you give them a letter grade, then you can tell Blackboard how much percent that letter grade is worth. So for that speech, I give you a B+. Well, in order to provide the student with a calculation based on numbers, Blackboard needs to understand, what do you mean by B+? So you just type it in. Yeah, you enter in whatever you mean by that. Now, if you will never give students a manual grade that's a letter, you're always working in numbers, then you don't have to worry about that because that's just there to let you know that you can use letter grades and you can control how that appears in a final numerical calculation.
So you'd have to manually put this into each course?
So there's already a schema in your courses and you can adjust it.
I think I missed it. How did you get here?
It's in that manage column in your full grade center. It's like this second thing down in the list.
So if I go manage grading schema.
And to be clear, because I remember last year grading periods was a question that came up. Grading periods are used frequently in K-12 where you have basically the whole year broken up into quarters or something and you're reporting to parents on how students are doing each quarter. For higher ed context, it's used mostly if you have to report midterm grades. And you want to have a kind of final weighted thing at midterm, and then you're sort of starting fresh after midterm, right? So it could be useful for those of you if you have a 2-term sequence and you use the same shell for that. Something like that you could keep grading periods in
I
place.
do use grading periods in one of the courses that's face-to-face because there's so many assignments that I have first half and second half. And it makes the grade book smaller when you're grading. I'm only gonna look at second half
Yeah.
now. So it's a filter.
Yeah, another filter.
Is there any way, if you have an example there of O1W1 help, whatever that is,
Yes.
and it's showing you numbers in huge decimal places. Is there some way that?
It's a bug, isn't it?
So that is a bug that has been resolved in a version of Learn that's after the one that you're using.
So hopefully next year you'll never
So
see
you can
one.
specify, I want.
You don't specify, it goes to 2.
Automatically does it.
Automatically goes to 2. Seeing more than 2 is a bug.
Yeah, that's.
Now, it doesn't change the calculation, but it does, yeah. It does.
And
It's a hassle.
I realize we were at our
Yeah.
time limit and I want to be respectful of that, but I do want to help you know that course tools, date management. Course tools, date management. You go here, you can adjust. I use start dates. You have was the old start date for the course? What is the new start date for the course? And you start and it automatically adjusts it by this difference in those days. Now, you may be off on a few days, but now you can go to your calendar and it may be on a Monday rather than a Wednesday. You drag and drop it. You drag and drop that assignment to Wednesday rather than Monday.
Or if you go by a certain number of days, you might end up with something due on a Saturday and you didn't mean to. After you roll it over.
Yep. Now, I do this a lot. It's really easy to do. And I'll always end up with 2 or 3 assignments I have to manually move around on the calendar.
How did we get to the date management?
Course
Tools. It's under course tools. So course tools, date management.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So that's if you use the calendar in Blackboard.
Yeah, if you have due dates on assignments, okay.
It doesn't matter if you ever
put-
look at the calendar.
Right, but if
as
you
long
have
as you
due
put
dates
date.
on assignments, if you attach due dates to assignments and tests, then you can use date management.
Also availability dates.
Yes.
So
Am I just
those
not
will
seeing a
also.
calendar?
What'd you say?
Where does the calendar?
The calendar's also, it's right here, course calendar.
Right here, this guy.
Also in the course tools. You can also get to the calendar in the My Blackboard area of your like macro system level navigation up in the drop down menu. And that will show you, both of these will show you if you want across all courses, or you can just select a single course to look at. And you can drag and drop things there and they will update to the assignment, for example. So if you decide, oh, we have snow day, people were out sledding, I want to give them their time back and we'll have the thing due, on Friday instead. You could just drag that assignment on the course calendar to Friday and then on the assignment in your grade, but everywhere else. For your students, on their calendar, on their assignments, it will all say it's due on Friday. So all of that is handy. All right, so we're over. Thank you so much for all of your attention today. And obviously you have such a great resource here. Avail yourselves of her at all times. And if additional questions arise, then direct them to Amy and her team. And if they have questions, they will direct them to me.
I did forget to show you one thing, and that was deleting the attempt. But if you go in the grade center to that little down chevron right next to that person, you can see all of the attempts and you can click on an attempt and delete it. And if you want A Nelson 18, I'm number 18, A Nelson 18, you can email me and I can send you a short video that shows it. So anything that you need, just send me a short little note. I can send you a video that shows something. Okay.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.
I have to get ready for me then.